So in this week's episode of Bitesize Biohacks, I'm going to be talking all about how to exercise through perimenopause and beyond into menopause, and really what's happening. So as we go through perimenopause, we're going to go on a bit of a swing in terms of estrogen. And the main estrogen that we produce in our cycling years is actually known as estradiol. Now, estradiol has many benefits as long as we don't have too much estrogen dominance. And its benefits really relate to muscle growth and strength, which is really important for helping with insulin sensitivity and maintaining body composition. It's also really important because it acts on myosin, which is a protein that acts as a kind of motor behind the muscle contractions and the force. So what we see is that as estradiol starts to reduce, we see reduced power and force in terms of our workouts. Oestradiol also affects the mitochondria, and it helps specifically sweep out free radicals that can be caused by excess exercise, for example, but any exercise actually causes oxidative stress. And so oestradiol really helps in that regard and helps us to develop stronger mitochondria. Now, the more mitochondria you have and the better mitochondria quality you have, the better your energy is going to be. And that's one of the things that I hear many women struggle with when they come to me in perimenopause, is struggling with their energy. The other thing is that as we go through perimenopause, we tend to, in the last 3 to 4 years, building up to that menopausal transition, what we see is weight gain. And many women will complain of weight gain, but the weight gain itself is actually more gradual. The more dramatic thing that we see is actually a reduction in lean muscle tissue and also an increase in fat mass. Now, this is a difficult combination because as lean mass starts to go down, that in and of itself reduces metabolic rate and can lead to more fat gain. The other thing that's quite problematic is we tend to see weight go a lot on around the abdominal area. Now, the abdominal area where we have visceral fat, it's more dangerous because it's in and around the organs, but the fat there actually also has more cortisol receptors, and that can trigger actually more cortisol production, which in turn leads to more fat storage, which can be very difficult to handle. Also, the anxiety that comes with the increase in cortisol and the reduction that we see in progesterone during the perimenopausal years. But there are things that you can do to really help to manage this, to promote better insulin sensitivity, which again is something that estradiol helps with, because not only does it promote insulin sensitivity, it also regulates something known as GLUT4, which is a mechanism that allows glucose to be moved into your muscle tissue as opposed to fat cells without triggering insulin, which is really helpful. It also promotes satiety and almost acts like leptin in a way, which is a satiety hormone, to help you feel fuller. It manages our moods, our body temperature, our blood pressure, which is why we can see increases in blood pressure as we approach menopause. We also see more hot flashes and things as we have difficulty controlling our body temperature. Now, progesterone, which is kind of sneaking out the back door during those perimenopausal years, has been shown to increase BDNF, which is like miracle grow for our brains, and helps to produce new neurons, and also just helps with things like working memory, for example. And progesterone has also been shown alongside estradiol to increase bone density. So you can see all these lovely benefits that we have when we have good optimal levels of estrogen and progesterone start to fall away during perimenopause. And this can make it really hard for women to handle, because what we notice is reductions in energy because of the effects on mitochondria. We see more fat mass, a loss in lean mass going down, so lean muscle tissue going down, a loss in bone density, increasing anxiety, difficulty sleeping. But specifically in today's episode of Bitesize Biohacks, what I want to help you with is how you can use exercise as a mechanism to right some of these things, because exercise is actually an incredibly powerful tool. So the first thing that I would say is you want to have, I guess, 3 different forms of exercise that you're really focusing on through perimenopause. The first one is to strength train, and you probably hear me talk about this a lot, but to strength train around 2 to 3 times a week. And what you want to do is provide sufficient stimulus, because we no longer have that stimulus of estrogen as it starts to drop down. We have less stimulus, should I say. So we want to strength train and we want to lift heavy. Now, if you're someone who hasn't been exercising, you're not going to be able to lift heavy straight away. So my advice would be to work with a trainer, but also to build up to this and make sure you strengthen your core, so your abdominal area and your back, to make sure you have a really strong core before you start lifting very heavy weights. So start with higher repetition weight training and less weights, and focusing on that core stability, working in rep ranges of kind of 12 to 20, and then you can drop down to sort of 8 to 12, and then when you're ready, you can get into the heavier lifting. And again, I would advise doing this with someone who can really monitor your form. Now, the heavy lifting really is six repetitions or less. and you want to be including some of that. My suggestion here, so that you don't overstress the joints, is that you use that on your compound lifts. So this would be things like squats, deadlifts, rows, overhead shoulder press would be good ones, and also a bench press. Those would be the kind of 5 key exercises. If you're someone that's looking for aesthetics, then you want to work on the smaller muscles as well. But with those, because they are smaller muscle groups, we want to just be doing higher repetition training. So focus on that heavy lifting on your big compound exercises once you've worked up to that 2 to 3 times a week. And then you can do higher repetition for things like biceps, triceps, lateral raises, other exercises that you do. The other thing that's now actually by doing that and increasing muscle mass, you're going to be helping to improve insulin sensitivity. But there's a couple of other forms of exercise that I want to touch on that are really important as well. And one of those is plyometric training. Now, plyometric training is really, really important because it helps to enhance bone density. It also has been shown to improve your metabolism at rest. So you're actually going to be burning more calories at rest. So you can incorporate this, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to say, right, I'm going to factor in a certain number of plyometric sessions a week, because that can be hard when you're already busy and you've got lots of things going on. My suggestion would be, if you can timetable a session in a week, then fantastic. And plyometrics would be things like skipping, jumping, depth jumps where you jump off a box or you jump onto a box would be the other alternative, things like burpees, all of those kind of high intensity work that involve an element of jumping or plyometric training. Now, you can actually incorporate that into your day, which is a really easy way to do it, and it's the way that I tend to do it. So every time I get up, when I've been working for maybe 45 minutes, an hour, I will just stop and do some burpees, or do a little bit of skipping, or do some jumping jacks. And that way I'm just working plyometric training into my week. And actually the benefits have been shown that if you can do 10 minutes of plyo 3 times a week, you'll go a long way to really helping improve these things that we're talking about. So it doesn't have to be a separate schedule session. You could just be building it into your day, which can be really, really beneficial, both in terms of time and actually getting that work done. And then the last thing I want you to think about is high intensity interval training, but specifically really high intensity, where you're going on a rate of perceived exertion where 10 is all out. I actually want you to be working between a 9 and a 10. And what's been shown to be really good here is actually sprint interval training. This doesn't have to be running on a track, for example, particularly if you're not a keen runner or you have any kind of knee issues or other joint issues. You can do this on a bike, and actually it's almost been shown to be better on a bike. But the benefits of sprint interval training is that it increases lean muscle mass, it reduces fat mass, and has been shown to reduce belly fat, and it lowers cortisol, as well as helping you burn more calories at rest. It's also been shown to enhance BDNF, which, as I said, was like miracle grow for your brain. So you're going to be getting these fantastic benefits of better cognition, better working memory and speed of thinking as well. It's also been shown to stimulate something called endothelial growth factor, which helps with your blood vessels and makes them more responsive. That again will help to improve blood pressure, it helps to improve cardiovascular health, and can also help to reduce things like hot flashes if you're suffering with those. Sprint interval training has also been shown to increase testosterone and to decrease estrogen, which is actually the form of estrogen that's formed by our fat cells, and to counteract the effects of cortisol. So many benefits of sprint interval training, and as I say, it helps you burn more calories at rest as well. So how can you work this in? Again, it doesn't have to be a lot. We don't want to be doing lots and long work of high intensity training. You just won't be able to go hard enough if that's what you're doing. So these sessions actually again can be very short. So you really want to warm up well, 5 to 10 minutes at least, or really more like 10 to 15 minutes. So your body's really nice and warm. And then what you do is you go all out for a short period of time and then recover. Now, some recommendations of how you could do this is you could do cycling sprints where you do all out for 30 seconds and then you rest for 30 seconds, all out for 30 seconds, rest for 30 seconds, and then you repeat that through 10 times, for example. The other thing that you could do is to increase more recovery. The important thing is that you can go hard when you're doing these sprints. So if actually you need to recover for 1 minute or 2 minutes or even 4 minutes, then take the recovery you need and then go really hard again and work up to something like 10 repetitions. You might be starting with actually 3, because the important thing is really to create that stimulus and go hard. And that's been shown to improve mitochondrial health as well. So that actually is going to help to give you more energy. Some other ways you might do it that are really super time efficient is to do what's known as Tabata. This was created by Izumi Tabata, who worked with the Olympic ice skaters, and he found that by doing 20 seconds of really hard output work followed by a 10-second recovery, repeated 8 times, really help them get fit. And there's lots of science behind that technique. So what you do is you just pick one exercise. Now that could be that you're doing it on a bike, for example, or it could be that you're doing something like Tabata training in the form of kettlebell swings or any kind of outdoor sprint training. If your joints are up to it and you're a runner and you can do that well, or you could do it on a treadmill, you could do it on a rowing machine. And you basically do 20 seconds of really hard work, followed by 10 seconds of recovery, and repeat that 8 times. So it's a maximum of 4 minutes, but over time you can work up to 2 or 3 rounds. So that would be another example. As I say, you can do things like kettlebell swings, but really that's what you want to be doing. And if you want to make it even more time efficient, then you can put that high intensity or sprint interval training on the end of your heavy lifting session, and that will just make it more time efficient really, in terms of not working too much into your week. So those are the 3 key things really to target those issues: to improve insulin sensitivity, to reduce fat mass, to reduce cortisol, to enhance lean mass, to activate more GLUT4 and take the pressure off having always to use insulin, and to really enhance your body composition and your bone density, is to include sprint interval training. Keep those sessions really short, 2 to 3 times a week. Include some plyometric work. Again, 10 minutes 3 times a week has been shown to be really, really good. You can work that into your day in little bits, as I've mentioned, and then to do some strength training, so some lifting, heavy weights if you can, again, a couple of times a week. And then if you really want the aesthetics, you can do some of those more isolation exercises that you would do higher rep ranges with lower weights. So those are kind of my tips in terms of getting through perimenopause. I hope they're helpful for you. Every week I'm on here doing bite-sized biohacks to really help you get some hacks and tips and tricks that you can use to change your life in a short bullet episode. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode.